Today on In the House, we sit down with Michael Crane of Rockwool Insulation and the host of BS&Beer Austin. Michael tells us his story, and we talk about all things Rockwool. We talk about why he started BS&Beer and some of the great topics they cover. Hang on, because it gets a little nerdy. We hope you like this episode. If you do, share with a friend and give us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening. Welcome to this episode of In the House. Today we are speaking with Michael Crane of Rockwool Insulation. Michael is also the host of the BS&Beer Austin group, which we'll get into. So BS&Beer, of course, is a play on words, meaning bullshit and beer, or building science and beer, or what is it?
It's building science.
Okay, good.
But we do our fair share of both.
Okay, well, for sure. I always like to, everyone we get on, I really like to know your history and like where did you come from, where did you grow up, just I want to know your story and how you arrived at where you are today.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long story, but I grew up in Mississippi. That's where I was born and raised. It took me a little way. I mean, I guess my first project that I ever did and kind of fueled my passion for what I do now started when I was in my adolescence. My probably year 12 to year 15 was kind of that kind of prime area where I was doing little side projects with neighbors or helping out with, I helped out some guys build, decks and retaining walls and stuff of that nature. So, shooting a nail gun, driving rebar into the ground, that was fun for me. I enjoyed it from that age. Somewhere during the whole school process, I kind of lost sight of focus until years later I got into building materials, selling metal studs, drywall, acoustical sealants, insulation packages. And I was asked to kind of do takeoffs from some smaller guys that didn't have time. They were running, sure, no problem. Part of the sales cycle,
Yeah.
So I do their takeoffs, run it for them, and then I guess it was 2015. I was ready for that next step up, and so a position within my organization came to Austin, Texas. We had an open position out here, and so I said, "Sign me up, I'm in." And so I moved over here with a new challenge. Now I'm not selling metal studs, drywall, everything I've been accustomed to. I'm selling specifically insulation products, which is a whole beast within itself. And then, years go by. I took on a project manager, estimator role with a bigger insulator in town, just running their commercial division. But we did more than just insulation. We did everything from metal framing, acoustical sealants, storefront systems. So finish outs like Jimmy John's, Chase Banks, office buildings, rehab clinics, stuff like that. I would take on and see those projects through from the estimating to the billing stage.
And that was while you were at Rockwool? Or
no, this is all before.
All before.
This is all before.
All right.
Long story short, distribution called me back for a few years, and then, and distribution's fun. It has its challenges, but you're limited. So, my passion's always been more residential woodworking, the finer craftsman style of construction. Yeah. And so, actually, I was kind of at a pivotal point in my life before this position kind of crossed my path, and where I was like, okay, something's got to be done. I either want, I'm not totally happy doing this. Even though this is my history, I'm not totally happy doing this. I want to get into residential construction somehow. And I knew from my contracting, working for somebody was not the answer. I wanted to do it for myself,
sure,
and go on and do that. And so I was kind of at that pivotal moment, and then this position came up that kind of really tweaks both my passion for residential construction and then my experience in products and assemblies, and kind of puts them into one. And so that's kind of how I made the leap from just distribution to Rockwool, and in this position I'm a business development manager. So I really talk more with architects, builders, contractors on our assemblies, how they work. We look at it from a building science side of things and what makes the most sense for that assembly and application.
Yeah. So while you were in the field, I mean, kind of describe. I mean, what was your role? What did you do day to day? What was your day looking like?
Well, I wore many hats, so it really depended on the day.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
So, I mean, I like I said, I did everything from generating the sales to making sure that projects were on sites in a timely manner. I didn't have, being that I worked for a company that this was outside their norm, I didn't have the right infrastructure to be able to fulfill this job correctly. So I didn't have like that superintendent, that gopher role that is very, very necessary to keep that job going. Otherwise, my job would have been in the office, making sure the sales were turning in and cutting POs and making sure job, have some site visits, making sure job was going accordingly. But no, when I got a job, I was all hands on and pretty much going. So my sales track looked like a mountain range.
Right. So how did what did you do in the field, I guess, that kind of helped the sales in?
I mean, besides experience, there's nothing in the field that helped my sales except for me getting the job done and proving to the GC that I was working for that I could do a job correctly. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I like clean jobs. Other than that, that's usually who I like to work for, guys that kept their job sites clean.
Yeah. Where'd you go to school?
So I went to, I graduated from Mississippi College.
Okay.
I went to Ole Miss for a little bit. Knew I wasn't going to graduate from there. It was too much fun, too many distractions.
Yeah. Yeah.
But graduated from Mississippi College, and yeah, that's.
But what brought you to Austin? I mean, was it just work?
It was work, an opportunity to, a new career challenge, really.
Did you have family that you brought along with you? Or did you kind of?
Well, we came on our own. My parents followed for a little bit, and then decided that they were going to go on. Then they're building a house in Florida, so.
Okay. Florida's growing. It's popular. Well, let's. I'm interested to hear more about this BS&Beer. We were kind of talking about that before we started the episode. That you really sponsor this event. Basically, it's just you. I mean, so why? What's the reasoning? What's the why behind doing this event?
Well, the why, I guess it really started. I mean, it really kind of goes back to, I guess, my interest in building science. Yeah. It goes back years before I even started it. And understanding, I was selling insulation products here in Austin to people like Risinger and Rouser Construction, some others. I think y'all even bought some Rockwool from it from time to time. And just kind of going, because I always grew, going up in commercial, you know the brand Rockwool, where it come from, fire and sound in a commercial world. That's usually the two common attributes of Rockwool that drives that price tag, but not price tag, that the need for that product, depending on the application. If it's a sound wall, just need the privacy, or if it's a demising wall for fire reasonings as well. But digging into the residential side, then you dig into more different attributes that the product offers. It's hydrophobic. Water just sheds off it, like off a duck's back. And I'm going in a round circle way here. But just understanding the product itself and how it's really what kind of attracted me to it and attracted me to other products and assembly designs. And so, but really got my head turning on how walls work, how things work. How does this product work with this product to create a superior system? So my head was already turning into kind of a building science direction. And then I got asked, I forgot where I was. I think I was on Travis Brungart's job site up in Kansas City, Missouri. And Travis and Joe, of course, run the BS&Beer chapter in Kansas City, and Travis, we just had some discussions, and Travis like, Michael, you need a BS&Beer chapter in Austin, and you're going to run it. I'm like, what? You see, I'm a Rockwool rep. You want me to run this building science? And he's like, yeah, Michael, it's easy. Just keep it conceptual. And I was like, okay, all right, yeah, okay. And I didn't know for the longest time. I guess it was February of 22 at IBS in Orlando. Sat down with him and some other of the BS&Beer leads throughout the nation, and we were just talking, and for a few months I just sat on it until I think it was about April. I said, all right, let's do this. Yeah. And so, of course, I knew Matt Risinger, so I called him. I said, hey, Matt, I'm looking at doing this, and this. I need a place to host it. You got any recommendations? And, of course, he was like, dude, my office is open. Just host it there.
Nice.
And so our first meeting was at Risinger Build's office here in Austin, and had a great turnout. And from there, we just continued. And as we went on, it got a little bit easier for me to come up with topics that kept top of mind. I have guest speakers on. We have a great building science, quality builders in this area. And so, I've had people like Luke Mesker on talking about Project Management 101, which, goes hand in hand with building science. If you can't implement it, it doesn't matter. And so project management goes hand in hand with that, in my opinion. And so some architects, we had a kind of a crash course earlier this year in architecture school and kind of what goes into that.
Yeah.
As well as architects, when they have a need to bring the builder in and need insight from the builder, and so, just really good topics that coincide with building science, and we can get into the 4 control layers and what this means and stuff like that. But to me, it's good to make a good ground basis on just topics that are we don't really think about as being building science and running a job. And so that's kind of where my focus has been kind of this year, is that a little bit. I've had people like Nikki Kruger with
I'm familiar with her.
Yeah, she's came in. She's done a presentation for us.
Because she's with Santa Fe Dehumidifiers.
That's correct.
Yeah.
She's with Santa Fe. Thank you. Yeah, she's with Santa Fe. We've done a WRB showdown where we represented everything from building wraps to pill and sticks to fluid applied, and then I had Zip come in. They kind of put on the event there, and so that was a really good one. I actually
who won? That's who won.
Oh man, let's just go Huber on that one. I think most of my builders do like Huber. A lot of I was hoping to have some speakers for the pill and stick and the fluid applied, but I couldn't get anybody, so I had to cover those 2 topics. So,
well, what product did you use for a fluid applied? Do you remember?
Fluid applied, I based it off of Prosico. One of my builders up in Abilene uses Prosico as his everyday.
They're like Cat 5 or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's the Cat 5 that he uses.
That's a pretty bomber product.
It's a great product. Yeah.
Well, okay, so we kind of got into the why, but if you could kind of give a short explanation of like what is it? Like what is when somebody hears BS&Beer, like what is it?
Well, it's a group. It's a monthly meetup. We have probably about anywhere from 25 to I'd say 60 people that show up every month. It's very laid back atmosphere. Grab a beer, sit down at a table, network and meet some people. But it's a great networking opportunity for people that want the more, I guess, the higher end performance out of buildings and that kind of construction style, to get together, meet, and network for people. The one thing to me it stands out for, if I could use one word, is it's a community. Mm-hmm. I've seen so many connections made through just the meetup and hearing those stories of, oh yeah, I was talking to such and such, we're doing a project together, this and that. And I'm like, That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
all I could ever want. I love connecting people with people. So
you said there's multiple chapters across the nation, right? I mean, how many are there?
ooh, they're popping up every day.
One in every state. Multiple in every state.
Multiple. Or? I mean, we just a few months ago we started BS&Beer up in Dallas.
Okay.
We have BS&Beer in Houston.
I think I did see that. Yeah, there was only one. I mean, how long has BS&Beer Austin been around? It's relatively new, isn't it? A couple of years, maybe.
Yep,
we'll be. It sounds like 2 years. You
started it.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, be 2 years in May. So
okay.
So about a year, just over a year and a half, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when and where do you have them?
Well, that's been the fun part. Is so the place we used to have them at Friends and Allies. Friends and Allies had to close down. It's a shame. So we're actually kind of in the middle of finding a new place, and I'm been kind of hesitant on pulling the trigger on one. The taproom manager, I know he's working on a new spot that could be our home down the road. So, but it's all going to depend on the location, on what that ends up with. I need to touch. Actually, that reminds me, I need to touch base with them, find out. I think probably next one, which will probably be our last year, since this month's so crazy with FiestCon going on, as well as Thanksgiving and the holidays. We'll probably just do something 1st of December, maybe at the Brutorium, show up at the Brutorium, something like that.
Okay. And, I mean, is this an event just for builders and architects? I mean, what's the market? Who are we looking to get involved with it? Just anybody who wants to learn about building science, or
really anybody? Yeah. I mean, we've had everybody. I'd like to see some more trades come in.
That'd be good.
We have had roofers. We have some woodworkers that come to it. People like that have come. For the networking aspect.
Sure.
And so. People that they're not accustomed to.
It's definitely a good place to host that. I mean, you throw a rock around here, you'll hit a builder or a contractor or an architect.
Right. So how do I track BS&Beer? How do I follow to figure out where your next one is?
So I usually communicate on 2 channels. One, I have an email list that I just shoot out, and so that's what I encourage people, because I put all the details in on that. I try to mimic the same on Instagram. Sometimes I'm good, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
So I urge people to get on my email list.
What is that email?
It's bsandbeeratx@gmail.com.
bsandbeeratx@gmail.com.
That's it.
The and symbol or A-N-D?
A&D. Thank you for clarifying.
Cool. Yeah, no, I definitely I want to put that out there. And I'll also include a link like in the description of this episode, so anybody listening can go and find that. Like I was saying, I know you just had one with Daniel Glauser. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Is it Glauser? Okay.
Yeah.
You just had one at his house because he's renovating his house and he's doing a whole passive house. And I really wanted to make it that one, but I couldn't. So. What type of things do you cover? I know we kind of alluded to that earlier, but what type of things do you cover in a BS&Beer little get together? What do y'all talk about?
Well, I mean, it just depends. It really depends on the topic that we're trying to hammer home. The past couple months, we've been hammering in passive house to raise awareness for FiestCon in Houston. That'll be next week.
What is FiestCon?
FiestCon is Passive House Institute US. Or United States, the United States versions of the Passive House Institute. Okay. So Fiest, national organization, they kind of the difference between them and PHI is the way I understand it is they kind of climatize performance metrics.
Okay.
So that way, if you're in a hot, humid climate like we are here, or Houston. You're not putting X amount of insulation on your product. It's
tailored to your climate.
It's tailored to. Thank you. Yes, it's tailored to your climate.
Okay. You said you have speakers come. Like who have you had?
So Nikki Kruger was one.
Okay.
I've had, guest speakers within. Andrew Seeley from G Pods America. He does off-site construction, modular mix. He's got a project going on outside San Antonio. Like I said, I've had Miguel Walker. He's given he's with Positive Energy. He's done a sole topic of Passive House and what it is, and kind of demythicize the whole Passive House movement. It says. So I think the catch line we used on that one was the problem with Passive House is that nobody really understands it, and so that's what. He came in and kind of gave all the nuts and bolts behind Passive House.
Explain what it is.
Yeah. But Oren Metzner with Barley Pfeiffer, he gave us a review of the architect and the need for when to bring a contractor in to make sure that, because as an architect, he says there's a lot of cool products out there.
Yeah.
But if I specify in a detail and it's not feasible in this area, then what good is it? So I need that kind of input from a builder perspective going, hey, I can only get that if I'm in Switzerland, here in Texas.
Yeah. So if you're an architect or a designer, like what kind of things could you learn from this kind of event?
I mean, we get into wall assembly types, we talk about vapor control layers, our WRBs, and what makes sense and what doesn't. There's a lot architects get out of it as far as that they can implement into their design. As far as it could be, when we get into protecting our walls, it could be large overhangs. I mean, what we've been doing for years. We put overhangs on.
Yeah.
But the new trend you see is these
Zero.
eaveless.
Yeah.
No overhangs. That is very dangerous to a wall assembly. And then you get into Passive House. Passive House is 100% the design side because you got to make sure your window to wall ratio is on point. And other kind of metrics that you need a lot of, it caters to the design side. So.
Yeah. So we keep throwing this term around Passive House. So maybe there's some listeners who might not totally understand what Passive House is. I mean, do you have a brief rundown or description of what is a Passive House?
So Passive House is in our country, it's a voluntary standard, and it's probably the highest standard you can meet when building a home. So as far as
energy consumption.
So you're going beyond zero energy. You are your home works for you pretty much, and not only that, you've got a very tight home. So the standard is, I think, 0.6 air changes per hour at Pascal 50 and below.
What's code? Isn't code
3 or 5?
3, yeah,
I think it's 5.
Something
I think code is 5.
I think it's 5.
Pretty
I know some areas is 3. I think it's 3 here, citywide.
I think the bar's pretty low here in City of Austin. So yeah. Again, I don't know if I can explain it very well, but a 3 ACH is meaning it's 3 air changes per hour, which means the air in your home is essentially replaced 3 times per hour.
Yes.
And then they have it up to as high as 5 ACH, meaning, again, all the air in your home is replaced 5 times in 1 hour. So basically it's a measurement of the leakiness or, how much air is getting into your house. So, again, if the bar is set, per code at 3 ACH, Passive House is, you said, 0.6 or below?
0.6 or below.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
It's a very tight house.
Very airtight.
Yeah, very tight, higher end, ERVs opposed to traditional HVAC systems.
Tiny vent hood, no fireplace.
Yeah. yes, exactly.
Triple pane windows. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, PHI is triple pane. I think you can get away with double pane.
Okay.
With FIAS. I believe I read that. I could be totally wrong. I don't know everything to know about Passive House by any means.
Yeah. No, me neither. I'm just from what I've kind of gathered, but just by reading. But yeah, so passive house and net zero, are those kind of one and the same, or is it those are completely different?
Two different.
Okay.
So net zero is a step below. Usually net zero can be met with just your HERS rater, really. Passive house, you have to have a CPHC consultant to do everything. You're doing WUFI analysis, which is your analysis of your wall assembly. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's got a higher price tag, of course.
Sure.
But net zero is good too. I like net zero as well.
So, I mean, you can build a passive house, essentially on your own. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to have somebody come in and necessarily document it or inspect it to qualify, right, as a passive house. Or
well, there's functionality and certification.
Yeah.
You could build a passive house and it would be passive in operation, but it might not be certified if you did it on your own. Then there's this path of having the consultants and following the paper trail that certifies a passive house. So one can be, but it doesn't necessarily need to be both.
Sure.
Correct. And I've dealt with people that they said, hey, I'm building to passive house standard, but I'm not getting certified.
Right.
And so there is those qualifications. I think down the road what we're going to see is we're going to see appraisers and realtors valuing houses based on these type qualifications. And so if it is certified, well, your value's gone up. But if you don't have the paperwork to prove it, then it don't mean anything. And so, I know that's kind of why I was at a conference earlier in October in Denver, and it's a Passive House Network, and the city of Denver, city of Boulder gave a presentation. I think it's the city of Boulder, as well as the energy company they use, much like we do with Austin Energy here for rebates. What happened during the Marshall Fire is, all those houses that were damaged during that fire were underinsured. People were, under by 6 figures plus that the insurance companies wouldn't pay. So the city or the county and the energy company came up with a program to get them rebate incentives by building to certain standards, passive house, net zero, or 2, that they could get really good comps back. So, through that energy program, if they built to that standard. And so they also adopted the 2021 code.
Oh, okay.
So,
didn't y'all want this last beer? Adrian, you good?
I mean, what are you going to do? I'll split it with you.
Split it with me?
Split it with
Okay, all right, that's fine. I suck these down like water, man.
I know.
That was up
So you're just not enough.
I should have got a 12. What's wrong with me? Well, so what? That's probably super loud. Sorry about that. What resources? I guess if you're a builder, what resources might be available to you if you're wanting to learn more about not just passive house, but maybe just building science in general?
Yeah.
And how might you go about improving the quality of your home? Like, what resources are out there?
Well, I mean, I tell you, Dr. Joe Stevebrook, I mean, he's amazing in the sense that, the Building Science Corp has a lot of documents that you can just Google online. I've got 3 of his books at home just on different climate zones. I've got the hot, humid climate. I got the mixed humid. I got the mixed and hot, dry climate. Any climate that my region may encompass, because I've got a pretty big region. So any region I need to know, so I have a resource for that specific region. I recommend that source. I recommend Green Building Advisor. Has some great blogs and entries by some of the top industry professionals. I like Fine Home Building. They put out, like, I think last month or a month before, they actually put out an article on passive house, or a passive house build.
Yeah.
Fine Home Building's a great one. JLC's a great one.
Yep.
just a lot of just stuff like that, publications like that.
And of course, BS&Beer is another.
BS&Beer, get involved with your local BS&Beer group, of course. Yeah, so there's all kinds of, I guess, communities, literature. This day and age, there's just a ton out there.
Yeah. So if I'm considering building, and I'm either going to build an active lazy house, call it, and the passive house.
Okay, active lazy house, got it.
Is there a bit of a metric as to, okay, a passive house is going to be 2 or 3 times more the cost than a traditional house? I don't know if that metric exists.
Well,
and it's a 2-part question. I'm going to follow up.
Yes and no. Because, really the definition behind passive house is to make a housing affordable. As if you look up on Passive House, their website, it's affordability. So even though, yes, you have to go and you do have to pay for certifications and stuff like that, it's meant to be affordable. Now that affordability cost is not going to be up front.
Right, there's a lot of upfront costs.
There's a lot of upfront. If you look at the life cycle of a home,
yeah,
your maintenance and operating costs far exceed what your original price tag are.
But a passive house doesn't have no maintenance.
Exactly. So
you're
going to
it has a higher maintenance.
So you're actually going to see a reduction over the life cycle of the house rather than that lesser house up front. So it depends. It's kind of like investment. So you put your money here and let it sit and grow, or do you just put it in a bank account and just let it not earn anything?
Where's that money? How do you make it back? Where do you make it back at?
You make it on the savings from the utility savings.
Does passive house? So that has to do with like heating, right? And cooling. So you're talking about electrical use, maybe even natural gas or propane. But what about water? Is there a focus on like reducing your water consumption? Because
you could. Some people even go look into water containment. I know there's a builder that I met at a net zero conference out of Bernie, and he builds water containment sites and usually stocks about 2 years supply of water on site for his clients.
Well, yeah, he's in Bernie.
Okay, fair.
But that's clever, and that's right. That's neat.
I just didn't know if there was any, when it came to passive house standards, if there was anything that had to do with water consumption. If there was a standard for using like low flow fixtures or something like that, or even.
Well, I'm sure that's part of it too.
Okay.
How much you use.
Because we talk about it like an energy consumption standpoint, but I was just curious about like water consumption as well. Yeah. Did you ask the second part of your question?
Well, yes. I'm not sure actually, but now I'm just curious that the energy required to run a dehumidifier and a heat exchanger is cheaper than just positively pressurizing a house with extra AC. And I'm curious on a devil's advocate perspective from builders who do it, and so wonder, all right, how does this play out in the long run?
That's a good question, actually. I would think so. I think if you could, because it's about the combination of the whole assembly. So like if we're tightening our house down to this, well, guess what? One, we can reduce the size of that unit. We don't need a huge HVAC unit to run the house. We can do it off an ERV and
Sure.
And so you have to look at it from that aspect too. Because if you have an oversized unit in any structure, well, guess what? It's just going to short cycle and not do any good, and then you're going to have comfort issues.
Yep.
So, I'm not as keen on the mechanical side, but I do know that. So I don't know if that's answering your question. I don't.
Well, it does, and ultimately, I think the effectiveness of a passive house comes down to the quality of the installation of all those products.
Agreed.
And time again in our industry, I think we see that 99, 98% of the products that are out there are good and solid, but the installation of said products is usually way below what it should be.
Yeah,
Agreed.
absolutely.
Agreed. I agree 100% on that. And so, and I feel like, if there's one area that is probably the weakest in our industry, is the installation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's across all spectrums.
Yep.
Yeah, it seems like what would be very beneficial, like you kind of mentioned earlier, you'd like to see more trades, more people actually doing the work and installing at these events like BS&Beer. So maybe we can come up with like an incentive program to get some of these trades involved in higher education, quote unquote. That's
I think they've also got to want to. I
Absolutely.
understand
that's why I say incentive.
Because you got guys that have pridefulness and have an eagerness to learn, and usually those guys you don't have a problem bringing them to something like that.
Absolutely.
You just mention it, and then you got the guys that are like, I've been doing it this way for X amount of years. They have no drive to learn. They have no drive, and the last thing they want to do is come to an event and they're told they've been doing it wrong for 10, 20 years, 30 years, however many, that's the last thing they want to do too. Because I look at things that I've done that I look back and I'm going, God bless, what was I thinking?
Absolutely.
But that, I guess it's that part of it's how you learn. You sometimes you have to make those kind of hard mistakes, or sometimes they're very simple, and it's just like, God bless. Okay, note to self: don't do that again.
we talk about it a lot. We kind of allude to it a lot on this podcast, but it's this attitude of excellence.
Yeah.
You have to have that attitude of, a willingness to receive constructive criticism, and being able to learn, and kind of this attitude of, you don't know everything. You might have been doing this for 15, 20 years, but the industry is constantly changing. There's always new products and new methods and new people, and so you kind of have to roll with the punches a little bit, but you have to have this willingness to learn, and you can't be so proud, and look at yourself and say, how can I do better?
Right.
I had another question I didn't want to forget, but going back to the whole passive house thing, I guess another thing that could really set your project up for success is maybe partnering up with an architect who's familiar with passive house.
Yes.
I don't know how many of them are out there, but it seems like having an architect on your side who really understands the standards and the detailing that's involved, because I've seen some pretty creative projects where they take into account the position of the sun, right, and how it changes during the summer months and the winter months, and so they orient the house. I saw this really cool one, and I can't for the life of me remember the designer, but they had this like a rammed earth wall in kind of the core of the house, and they had these really large windows, which I don't think is very common among passive house. It's not, but the purpose of that was that it allowed the sun in during the morning, and so that wall was warmed in the sun, and at night when it cooled off, the wall radiated heat, so it became the heat source for the whole house, and it was so well insulated that you didn't need to run the heater, because that wall stored all that thermal energy, and then at night when there was no sun, it radiated that heat back out into the house.
That's really cool.
And that was super creative.
That's
really
like creative.
Top.
That is creative. The mass wall is amazing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell people. We sometimes get into the mass wall topic even here. And I'm like, I don't know how it would do here in Austin, because when it's hot out in the summer, guess what? In the night, it's still hot. I don't know if you want that wall radiating heat.
Well, but I think if it's done correctly, it works the opposite way. It's a thermal battery.
Right.
Is ultimately what it is. And so here, I'm a huge fan of interior stone, and as you know, Lonnie, I've got a bunch of stone in my house.
Yep.
We cool it down at night, and then that thermal mass of the stone all day long. It's hard to heat the house up even in the summer. So
that's good.
But I think to go back to your question though, Lonnie, it's it's not just the architect. It's every person who's
Yes.
involved. It has to be the
Yeah.
client. It has to be the architect. It has to be the builder contractor.
Yep.
And all the trades.
Yes.
Everybody's got to buy into the passive house.
No, you're right.
And I think that's right. And there is a large architect community that is passive house. We even have them here in Austin. So Trey Farmer, Forge Craft is one of them. Probably one of the most knowledgeable ones that I know. Josh Ledger that works for them. They're one of the best firms here in Austin that at least I know of for passive house.
Yeah,
I could be missing some, but that's the ones that
I'm a big fan of Forgecraft. Yeah, I'm familiar with them. Well, kind of a more broad topic and kind of a larger question, but when you reflect back on your career and you kind of look into the future, how do you think the industry has changed over the years, whether that be good or bad changes?
The industry, I mean, to be honest, it's really tough because we want to put all, we want to point a finger and go, this is the number one problem. Let's call it a tradesman not taking passion in his work and being prideful and doing the best he can and it being okay. But I also believe that's part on the builder for not stepping up and saying this is not okay, this is not this is not good work, and calling them out. And I think that's been through a variety of time periods that we've had where some builders have felt that they've been handicapped to the industry, to their trades, and not really demanded that. I feel like that it's overcome, but the talent pool does. I hear that a lot. The talent pool is not, but then I see a young generation that comes to like my BS&Beers that wants to learn. And I'm going, well, maybe we're missing something there. Maybe it's not on them. Maybe we're not educating enough. Maybe we're not taking it. One of my members that comes, he's from Australia, and he was telling me, in Australia they go through a master apprentice program. Mm-hmm. And I'm really a fan of that. And I think it should be implemented in such a way here. And I think within certain construction companies, it is implemented to a certain degree. But gosh, it's just a huge testament. So I don't know if there's really are we going in the right way? Yes. If we're going in the wrong way, no. I don't know if there's a clear-cut answer there from my perspective. I do see a lot of shortcuts taken in the field on certain houses, but then again, I also get to see some of the best houses I've ever seen in the world. There are some amazing builders, amazing architects. I'm fortunate in my job that I am lucky to go on some of these job sites that are just will blow your mind. And I know y'all do some amazing projects along, but some of these projects I get to go on are amazing as well. And so,
There's a great group of builders and architects and craftsmen in this town. We are very lucky to see.
Well, it's not just this town. I cover Alabama to here in Oklahoma. So I get to see some. I met a builder in Mississippi that just blew my mind. Going, you did what? and just some beautiful work. I was in Baton Rouge last week, and I got to tour some amazing homes in Baton Rouge. Yeah. Just gorgeous, kind of that combination of the Southern French charm, and they just some amazing things. So you have pockets everywhere, these builders that just do amazing work. But Austin is full of a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. That's a huge territory.
It is it's a little bit large. I don't go to... my focus is mainly here in Texas. So I'm usually here between Houston, Dallas, and Austin most of the year. But I do take a trip to Louisiana and northern Alabama about twice a year.
Nice. Well, enough about building science. What do you do for fun outside of work?
Outside of work. Well, that's a limited situation.
Yeah,
so with 3 kids, it's hard.
Nice.
So I have 3 kids. I have a 15, a 12, and one that's about to be 5 here in January. So,
nice.
So, they keep me busy. I love watching them play soccer. They love soccer, and so that's really what takes a lot of my time.
Absolutely.
I guess if I'd had more time on top of that, I would probably be in a lake fishing somewhere. So
yeah,
that's always my stress reliever growing up was fishing. So.
Really, like what type? Fly fishing? Or you just
I love fly fishing.
Yeah,
I'd go fly fishing when I was in Mississippi College. I just had a fly rod in the back of my truck all times. But I go, just regular bass fishing. But yeah, fly fishing is fun.
Well, you're in Texas. You like shooting guns? You like hunting?
I do. I do. I've got quite the collection myself, and so I don't get to shoot enough either.
Yeah.
It's one of those admiration type deals. Oh yeah, that's a nice gun. It'd be nice to shoot that sometime.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I kind of started my own collection, and it's hard. Yeah, because I just got a scope on mine. You just got a scope. You got a night vision scope.
Oh yeah.
Got pigs to murder.
But no, it's cool. So you said what ages are your kids? 15 and
12 and 5.
12 and 5.
Took a little break there after the second one.
Took a little break. Yeah, took a little break.
That's pretty awesome. All boys, girls?
2 girls and a boy.
Nice.
My middle one's the boy.
Nice.
Oh yeah, he's gonna love life.
So yeah.
Sister above and below him.
Yeah.
That's cool though. That's a good family.
That's a good mix.
So 15, about ready to drive.
That's what she thinks.
Mm-hmm. How are the teenagers going? I got my 5-year-old is my daughter. She's 5, and I'm enjoying every minute of it. Those younger years, and I'm you always get the horror stories about teenagers.
Yeah. Well, no, she's good, and if the highways that I live by in Georgetown are insane. And that's what scares me the most. It's not really her driving.
It's everybody else.
It's everybody else. If I could find that perfect tank, that's probably what I'm wanting down our first car. Just get a tank.
Yeah, man, I don't blame you. That scares me.
So
I'll never forget when I was 13, I asked my dad, I said, "Hey Dad, when I turn 16, what kind of car am I going to get?" And he said, "Whatever the hell you can afford."
Yep.
So
I've said that too.
Daughter's a little different though. Daughter,
Take care of daughter. I tell my son, he's the dreamer. He's like, "Oh yeah, you gonna give me a Lambo for my 16th?" And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe a die-cast."
Maybe a Hot Wheels. Golly. Well, Michael, another question. Do people confuse you a lot with Michael Caine?
No. I actually have never gotten that. I thought I'd get more.
Dude, we were just talking beforehand. Like I kept thinking Michael Caine. And I was like, I had to remind myself, like, no, it's Michael Crane.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. It doesn't, happen all that often.
Yeah.
Can we talk Rockwool?
You can talk whatever the heck you want.
Is that all right?
Yeah, we can talk
Because you had said something earlier that kind of piqued my curiosity from just nerdy science building part of it.
Okay.
You said it was hydrophobic.
Yep.
A particular product in specific, or kind of like the Rockwool material itself?
All of our products are hydrophobic.
Really?
Yeah.
So if it sits in water, let's say it's in the wall cavity, the assembly, and it's sitting in water, what happens to it?
So now that's a little bit different situation. You've got like kind of it's kind of forced into a water situation.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's kind of forced, it's not absorbing it. Well, it is kind of. So if you imagine a rock in a stream, and it's in the stream, you pull it out. Well, that rock is wet, it's dark, it's got water. You lay it on the side. Well, guess what? 30 minutes, an hour go by, it's dry. Well, our product's the same way. Once that water's removed, it still has the ability to drive, and it still has that performance. that did before. You don't lose. You don't get any degradation from being subjected to that.
So let's back up. The reason why, it goes back to the name Rockwool.
Correct.
So this insulation is actually made from rocks.
Thank you for clarifying. Okay. Yes. As namesake, it comes from basalt stone, which is volcanic rock, and so it's made from rock, and so Rockwool really kind of harnesses the attributes that rocks have, and that's one of the things that kind of drew me towards Rockwool was, if you look back, the most documented construction product of all time is stone. Yeah. It comes from stone. And so, but yes, it's hydrophobic, so in a leak situation where it's leaking down the wall, it's just going to drain right down it, or like if it's on the exterior of a building, it's going to be a rain screen. It's going to run right down the product. Right, because y'all do have exterior insulation products. You don't just have products that you stuff in a wall cavity. You actually have products that go on the exterior side of a building that could be part of the rain screen assembly, correct? That's correct. Yeah. Correct. And it's one of my favorite wall assembly designs because you're putting a product on there that acts as a whole nother drainage plane, and it's taking a lot of load off your WRB. And so, if you have a WRB, say you've got, say your framer's not the best at taping, you get a fish mouth right there in your tape seams or something like that, and you have board and batten on the outside of your cladding. Well, anything gets behind that board and batten, that fish mouth is just susceptible to have that water just congregate right there. Guess what? Over time of water getting back there, it's just going to continue building itself down and down and down until it's inside the cavity. By putting Rockwool on the outside, you are offering a drainage plane there. It's even more less likely for any kind of water to even get to the face of that WRB where a fish mouth would be likely, or reverse shingling or whatever. Yeah. Or overdriven fasteners, that would be there. So it's very helpful in that circumstance. Flooding, Rockwool still stands if it's a flood water situation to replace it. That's just their standpoint on it. Don't know what, especially in a cavity, you don't know what kind of bacteria is in the water. So
it's going to act like an air filter. It's just going to grab everything that's passing through. It's a
fiber's product, right?
Yeah. And if you don't mind, can you explain it? Did you say basalt rock?
Yeah.
How does that go from rock to the material?
So a bunch of crushers, and then we put in a furnace and pretty much heat it up into lava. And so we take it from a liquid state. We spin it around like in a giant cotton candy machine.
I was going to say, you're making cotton candy out of rocks. Cotton candy out of rocks.
Awesome. Yeah. It creates these fibers, and then we just lay it all down on a big pendulum. It goes in, and then we lay it on top of each other in a manner that gives it more dimensional stability. It comes with cross stability, and then we push it down with some to make it more dense, depending on what product. So less dense is going to be our bat products. More density is going to be, like our Comfort Board 80 for the exterior wall, and then we have some even higher density products like our Top Rock products that you can literally drive a semi on top of and it not even affect it.
Oh wow!
Is it recyclable? Could you take the old Rockwool and heat it back up, stick it in the oven, and remake it?
In theory, you could, and in Europe, you can. So in Europe, they have a recycling program for Rockwool that comes out of old buildings. In fact, our oldest to date that we had, I think it just happened this year. I was reading an article. A contractor was doing a renovation for a hangar in Denmark at the Copenhagen airport, and took out an 85-year-old piece of Rockwool out of the building, sent it back to our labs, and they tested it, and it tested, off the charts like the same it was from day one, 85 years later. So, huge testament to the durability of the product.
Why only Europe?
Cool.
Do what?
Why only Europe?
Their train system's better, and they have more factories.
Okay.
So it's a little bit easier. Where in the U.S. now we only have 2 factories. our train system's not the best to do that here.
Okay.
So it will be in the works at some point. It's just not.
I don't think our construction industry here has a mentality enough to
No.
recycle.
And I think you're right on that part. I mean, heck, is sometimes I'll say Rockwool and they'll say what? So much less going, oh, this is Rockwool, and you send it back to the plant.
But it also goes back to cost. In Europe, sending something to a landfill is expensive because the landfill is expensive. Here, we've got so much land, it's like, it's cheap, just get rid of it, throw it away.
But at some point, that'll go away.
It needs to.
Yep.
Eventually it will. That was neat stuff. I appreciate that because I actually didn't know how it was made.
Well, in the South also, it's termite resistant too, so it's huge for our area.
Yeah.
That's one attribute of Rockwool that people don't really understand. Is we've done
That's true. I think I have heard that because I mean it's made of rock, so it's kind of like diatomaceous earth in the sense that it tears up their exoskeleton. So they can't.
In fiberglass, I can't see termites in fiberglass either.
So and Rosinger says this on this, and I've told him a couple times to not say that.
Okay.
Because I think it's more so that it's inorganic. There's nothing for them to feed off of.
Yeah.
So their mortality rate in our in the test chamber was high because they didn't have anything to eat. They starved to death.
Oh, so Risinger got it wrong.
Right, maybe so.
And you learned it today.
Well,
on
but
this
the one thing, again, this kind of goes back to the air filter comment. While the material itself is inorganic and can't get moldy, things that pass through it get trapped in it, and then that gives media to organisms or other things that can then take off. True. Right? It's not an antimicrobial product, so it's not preventing.
The product itself doesn't promote or propagate mold or mildew growth.
Right.
In a cavity setting, if water is there at the bottom, whether it's, rolls off Rockwool or not, and maybe congregates there at the baseboard and the stud, and it starts growing mold or mildew there, that's a whole different scenario.
Right.
So yes and no. The product itself will promote it. So I wouldn't see any mold or mildew growing within the product itself.
Right. In a neutral environment.
But
I don't think it matters what the product is. If it's flooded and let's say you have sewage floating in that water, even when that dries up, you've left material on that structure that's going to cause failure.
And that's why Rockwool is, hey, if it's flooded, get rid of it for IEQ.
So how are you competing with foam, spray foam? Because what I think is interesting is Rockwool, bad insulation, has a higher performance rating than foam, but foam sprayed into a cavity, of course, has a better effectiveness. Because it seals the cavity.
Because I've sold spray foam for years before coming. I sold all kinds of products like that. And so, foam, the biggest variable in any foam project is the person spraying it. It's the biggest variable. And so, the one problem I have with that industry is, this is a chemical formula that came up into it. It was come up in a lab setting. A lab setting being 70 degrees. How often? I mean, in Austin, how often is it 70 degrees?
Very rarely.
Very rarely.
Maybe for 30 minutes.
Maybe, yeah. And how often? I mean, if it's in our rain season, well, gosh, your moisture content's high. We've seen the wood coming out of the lumber mills now. It's wet, it's green. So if they're not taking precautions on the temperature that it is outside, their pressures, stuff like that, then you have more of a likelihood of some kind of issue, whether it be pocketing behind the foam, which can create a whole nother slew of problems. And so, or peeling off a stud, stuff like that. Those are usually signs. Those are usually signs of either a pressure imbalance or a moisture problem, was my understanding.
I think the time they sprayed, it was during the winter and it was cold.
Yeah.
And I had that problem where they sprayed it, and then after it cured, it started to kind of peel away from the studs, and I was like, well, there goes your ceiling. Like you don't have any
right. And that's what, so it just goes back to that. And so that's why it's just so much variable. Now, a seasoned veteran applicator, he's going to be able to see these things really quick, remedy them, and you'll get a good job and good product. But, and it goes back to vetting our contractors correctly from a builder stance. And so, because foam can be good. It can be a great product. But at the end of the day, I feel like foam is overused in its air sealing capabilities when this should be something that's done on the exterior, the most continuous layer of our home. And so you're air sealing 75% of your home, if that's your air barrier.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the biggest thing that the people take for granted with spray foam.
I went to a building envelope conference one time, and the best advice I've ever heard, and it was these Canadians, and they were poking fun but making a joke, and they said, we don't understand how you guys build down here in the U.S. In Canada, we like to wear our sweaters on the outside.
Yeah.
But down here in America, you eat your sweaters. And it was a reference to, we put our insulation in the middle of the wall.
Is that a fat joke?
No. I use the same thing. So I say put a koozie on your beer in the summers and put a sweater on you in the winters. And it can apply to our northern climates. It can apply down here. And I was like, you walk out with a cold Coke or a cold beer. Well, guess what's going to happen on this hot sunny day? It's going to condense. You don't think our houses are doing the same?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think continuous insulation is huge.
Yeah.
And it's going to just continue to grow over time. So.
It needs to, because that full envelope on the outside, preventing thermal bridging, is so critical.
Well, it goes that combined with a quality air seal, and those are two of the key parts that make a comfortable home. Mm-hmm. And when we talk high performance, people, high performance gets a bad rap. Well, it's high performance. I'm not interested in going crazy here. Not a passive house. I'm not interested in going crazy here. Well, high performance, comfort, pest free homes all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
The same building practices make a house comfortable.
Yep.
Makes a house pest free. The one thing I see the most is, the sheathing to slab connection. Take a piece of Fentrum tape and seal it off. Mm-hmm. Some great stuff. I don't know if y'all have worked with Fentrum, but it's a great product that I've seen. Mm-hmm. It's phenomenal in just sealing that layer, or liquid, almost a liquid flash, or Proseco product,
sure.
Something like that to seal that joint right there. It's amazing. Just from that, just keeping bugs out. And so
that's a critical juncture, yeah.
It is a critical junction. There's multiple ways to kind of, I think now they have a product that goes up on your sill plate to cap off the capillary action, as well as is almost like a T, so it kind of fills that.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure. I appreciate your time. I want to include the link to BS&Beer. I'd love to see more people get involved, especially the trades. And we'll include links to all these resources that you pointed out to us about essentially getting a higher education as a builder. So I appreciate your time. Very insightful, very deep knowledge as far as building science goes. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Yeah. It's been great.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow us on Instagram. We want to hear from you, so leave us some feedback to help us shape future episodes.